For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss a column titled Build Unity to Defend Democracy and Advance an Emancipatory Future. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
So you argue in this column for building broad unity that it's a way of responding to the multiple crises we now face in our country. Is it realistic to expect to build unity between capital as well as and workers and similar categories whose interests are so deeply opposed?
Yes, when I wrote this, I was initially responding to an article in the Sunday Times by Imran Bakkas, who suggested that we should revive the UDF. And I was not wanting to say, oh, well, that's impractical only. I thought the unity that is possible to build must be built. And some unity, like something like the UDF, popular unity involving workers and the poor, will take a lot longer. At this point in time, I believe that all citizens have an interest in ending corruption. Because when people steal from the state, they're stealing from the resources that will fund social grants, that will fund health care, that will fund transport. All of those things, for example, are in crisis. I mean, President Ramaphosa said, instead of going on the roads and having accidents, people must use public transport. But where is the public transport that is reliable and safe? So there is an interest. The wealthy people have an interest in ending corruption because business has to pay more for a contract if something has to be given under the table. The poor just can't get a place in the queue for some things because of this. So I do think it is possible if you have a leadership, and I'm not talking now about the ANC, but a leadership of such a movement, which could include the ANC, which tries to operate in a non-sectarian basis and to get people to join together on what they hold in common. You don't have to discuss about what you disagree. Like, you don't have to convert everyone to communism or to Catholicism or anything like that. You focus on what you agree. Now, the problem with a lot of activists is that they have an all or nothing approach. And that is what I'm saying is not a good idea.
You also speak of common interest, that different sectors in ending corruption, like the rich and the poor, the states as well as citizens. But when they do not see these common interests that you think they share, how do you even bring them together?
Well, you know, the thing is, people seem to have forgotten about organization. They spend money paying people's membership fees, taking them through to NASREC, things like that. Now, what you really need to do, if you want those people who voted in NASREC to remain committed to things, or to join up in this type of unity, you've got to sit patiently with each of the prospective parties, not meaning political parties, parties to unity, and convince them. It takes a long time to convince people. But if you convince them, they have an understanding that is lasting, enduring, and that is what we've tried to build to overcome all these obstacles. Also, you hear, you know, you can't just go and say to someone, please join us, unless it's obviously something where someone can see a benefit, like a 1,000 automatic prize or something. But if it's something where they can't see a benefit, you've got to hear what they say and listen, and then grapple with how you answer it.
And you do not seem to think that one needs to abandon the idea of building the popular unity, like you've spoken about the UDF of the past, but that there must be simultaneous building of broad unity at another level. Is it realistic to build two types of unity at the same time?
I think so, because when you build unity, if you look even at the UDF was not itself an organization. It was comprised of a number of different organizations. Each of those organizations built themselves, but they simultaneously built a united democratic front. Now, in this situation, some people may be building a popular unity, which big business doesn't want to be part of, but that doesn't stop you from relating to big business on the areas where their understanding and your understanding converge, where you both feel clean government, ending corruption, rule of law are in the interests of all. But you can't go and speak to big business about Marxist-Leninism or something like that, come together on Marxist-Leninism. But that doesn't prevent you, if you've got a Marxist-Leninist group, from actually discussing that amongst yourself. Now that will not even fly for a popular unity, because you can't make that condition of joining popular unity that you're a Marxist. So I'm saying that you can simultaneously do more than one thing, as long as you understand that the broad unity, you've got to be non-sectarian. You can't say to so-and-so, come join me, bring your red flag, and you're talking to the head of Standard Bank or something like that. You've got to say, let's join together. And if they say, look, I'm not comfortable with burning down this, that, and the other, then you've got to understand they're not. They're prepared to come and wear their advocates' gowns, if they're advocates, or suits and all of that. You've got to make concessions to them. You also have to make concessions in popular unity, but much more in a broad unity.
And lastly, why does xenophobia figure so prominently in your evaluation of current crises and building of unity?
You know, I think that there's something incredibly shameful in the treatment of the most vulnerable sections of society as if they are vermin. And this dancing around that it's criminal and it's not xenophobic, I mean, everyone knows that the people who are targeted are mainly foreigners. If they target South Africans, it's usually people from Limpopo, Tsonga and Shangaan people who they perceive as coming from somewhere across the border. And it's racist. Xenophobia is a form of racism. It's a form of you're taking the already marginalized and making them even more marginalized. And I agree with Achille Mbembe, who said in the first lecture that we really need to make a borderless Africa. Now, I'm not saying, I don't think he meant that as an immediate and practical suggestion for now, but we've got to work on the assumption that if we believe in Pan-Africanism, we can't have exclusion at the center of our mind. We've got to ask ourselves, what do we share with these brothers and sisters across the border? Because very often the borders separate parts of families. So the borders are what's artificial, not the presence of foreigners. Presence of foreigners or migrants and asylum seekers is actually a more natural phenomenon than their separation.
Thank you, Professor. That was researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Crema Media's Polity about building unity to defend democracy and advance an emancipatory future.